And it's time. It's Ghost with the eyeballs. With the eyeballs. I do not want to hear myself in my ears. Scott Turner. It's good to see you. Tato Kalin. Tato Kalin. I don't know, but go to YouTube. Now you're going to be able to see. You are not going to be able to see. All right, what do we have? This is what we got. We got a lot tonight. Tonight's going to be good. Tonight's going to be good. I like this stuff. This is hot. I feel like I say that every time, though, because I just really enjoy this type of thing. But tonight, I'm straight in, because less work for me later, less cutting. I can just upload things to other places. So the topic is, I guess it kind of depends to a degree. Should Christians be pacifists? I suppose would be an adequate title. Another is the turning of the cheek. Is that a valid principle? Is it even a principle? What does it mean? When should it be used? Is that all the time? Is that just sometimes? The Sermon on the Mount. Honestly, as a whole, I have a slight problem with picking little things out of the Sermon on the Mount because it really is meant to be a one piece kind of unit there. And I don't like picking it into pieces. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to. So, quick little overview while stragglers make their way. We're going to start with a little something from C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis has a book. What is her book called? His book called. C.S. Lewis. Shoot, what is it? It's something very catchy. Why I'm Not a Pacifist. It was an essay. So C.S. Lewis wrote an essay called Why I'm Not a Pacifist. I believe it's in book form, though. I think you can get it in book form, but you can read it for free all over the internet. I don't think it counts as piracy, but it might. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into the copyright. But we're going to start off with that because I find it very interesting. I think, obviously, wild mind of our kind of our time. Very relevant still in our time. Then I want to go straight to the actual verse is from Matthew. Then I want to look at what most people look at if they were going to ask this question. Because when we ask these questions, I feel like 90% of Christians are just going to Google it. And 90% of the time, they're going to get what we're going to go through. So we're going to kind of pick at that and see how we feel about that. And then go into some other verses that may be used to justify the verses in Matthew, depending on your interpretation. In my opinion, they counteract it. In other people's opinions, they justify it. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit too. And then after that, we have some old but beautiful thoughts, commentaries on it from a much earlier time. So a little bit difficult to read if you don't read things like that often, but very insightful, very beautiful. And then I'm hoping to kind of have a discussion because this is obviously like it's very relevant right now. This is very relevant. We are on the cusp of much violence. So a few ideological layouts here before we actually start. There is talk right now among Christians in Christendom, in the Christian ecosystem, of what do we do with the war? Depending on your view again, we are probably entering into war. I feel like you have to at least say that. Valerie, good to see you. I would say we've already entered a war. Maybe I'm a cynic. I don't know, but people have already died. Military has been dispatched. I feel like we're in the war. I feel like we've been in proxy wars for years now, but I feel like we are now actively involved in a hot war. Maybe I'm crazy though. But anyways, within the Christian sphere of the online world, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, there's a lot of talk right now of Christians should not be supporting war at all. And then if you take that further, Christians should not be supporting the use of firearms in war. So I don't know what those people want us to do. They didn't want us to joust. Should we go back to jousting and just have the Iranians get on horses and do this, Renaissance style? I'm not sure. But they're saying don't use guns at all. So, you instantly lose the war. one, if you're not going to use guns. But beside the point, I guess, just odd things that I didn't think were real, and they're very, very real. These views are very, very real. So anyways, it's valid for today. It's valid for today. They want us to they want us to cast fireballs. Yes. They want us to freeze them like Baldur's Gate, if anybody's that old and was a nerd when they were younger. They want us to use sorcery, but the good kind of sorcery. So I don't know. I feel it's very relevant. We were going to talk about it anyways, but I feel like it's wildly relevant now because it's being talked about so much. Should Christians support the war? Should Christians support guns at all? But should we support the killing of other people? Should it matter whether they're threatening us or not? Does that even matter? Is jousting for the win? Is violence ever justified at all? Or is it not? And in the verse that is used almost only ever by itself is the main one for tonight. And that is Matthew. And that is right here. So we're going to read this real quick right now. And then we're going to read a little something from C.S. Lewis. So it comes out of the Sermon on the Mount. It's a section titled in most Bibles as retaliation, possibly revenge, depending on what Bible you're using. But it's Matthew 5:38. It says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you." Now, a couple of things here. This principle is often referred to as the lex talionis, or the law of retaliation, which is why most Bibles will have retaliation as the title there. But if you go back to Exodus 21 through 24, you can see where that comes from. That's the origin of it. It contrasts with the unexpected, or in some views undeserved, generosity that a member of the kingdom of heaven should display. It contrasts with that. So many things died with Mosaic Levitical law. There are people who believe this is one of the things, that the eye for the eye died. And I'd say even the people who don't believe in Christian pacifism, they still believe that this idea of an eye for an eye in any scenario is still something null and void now under Christ. He also said, do not resist the evildoer. Jesus is speaking of someone who does wrong to another person, which is that needs to be specific. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about in a general sense. He's not talking about anything at all other than what he's talking about. And that is person to person. That's the context. We can talk more about it and expand on it, whatever, cool, no problem. But the context is just that. He encourages the people who follow him to return good when someone else intends or does evil on a person-to-person basis. That is all that he's talking about. If we want to eisegesis other things, cool, but it's not exegesis. You're putting things in now, you're not taking things out. There's a difference. And then he said, whoever forces you to go 1 mile. Here's the reason I have a hard time talking to or listening to some people try to teach the Bible, because they'll just say like, oh, it's a general reference to like, he's just trying to paint a picture. It's an illustration. Like, no, it's not. He's making a very specific reference. The specific reference is that the Roman military, they occupied Israel during this time, and soldiers could require bystanders to carry a load for 1 mile. It's a very specific reference that Jesus is making. It's not some nimby-wimby, odd general reference. It's extremely specific. So it matters to some degree. Does it change like the meaning of it? No, but it's important to understand what he's talking about. If we don't understand what he's talking about, no offense, Mikkel, you're going to love it, but I don't care what your opinion is. I just can't. I can't. I love you. I'll respect your opinion, but I don't care what it is, because you need to understand what is actually being said. And that is what he's referring to. The Roman military was occupying Israel during this whole period, and the soldiers were actively doing this. So he is using an active part of their culture and dynamic to connect with the audience and to give them something that they already knew about. It would require people to carry a load of miles. So he's saying, if that is you, if you get called to carry that load, make it more. Do another to prove a point. He's trying to drive a point home. And honestly, this verse alone all by itself, it kind of screams pacifism, if you're being honest, until you start to pick at specific things, in my opinion, and I'll justify. But once you begin to pick at some of the things like, do not resist the one who is evil. That's an important statement. That just gets skipped over. That's a very important statement. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. Seems obvious. Go further. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Again, these are personal things. It's a person to person, and that is all. So then the larger questions of, well, what about war? What about these specific situations outside of a personal dispute, which is what he's talking about? The very next couple of verses include being sued for a tunic and then giving a cloak as well. These are person to person issues. All right. Then I want to read this. This is from C.S. Lewis. Again, it comes from Why I'm Not a Pacifist. And it says this: as for divine authority, he points to Christendom, the Church of England's 39 articles, Thomas Aquinas for Catholics, and St. Augustine for the early church. And he suggests that the apostolic writings are all silent on or speak against pacifism. Looking more closely at scripture, he considers Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount about turning the other cheek in Matthew 5:39. Lewis believes Jesus is speaking in hyperbole, and his teaching should be limited to neighborly disagreements, where the only motivation is retaliation or revenge on a personal basis. He sums up Jesus' teaching saying, insofar as you are simply an angry man who has been hurt, mortify your anger and do not hit back. While Lewis believes that pacifism is built primarily on this one verse, he points to several other verses that speak favorably of war. Jesus praised without reservation a Roman centurion. That was in Matthew 8. And Paul in Romans 13, and Peter in 1 Peter 2 speak sympathetically towards participation in governmental authority and presumably the authority of the sword, which if you look, it is. So you have some validation in the other direction against the concept of generalized pacifism. Lewis's passion. Lastly, Lewis is skeptical of a secret influence of passion in the pacifist, because pacifism threatens you with almost nothing. It offers you a continuance of the life you know and love among the people and in the surroundings that you know and love. On the other hand, joining the army leads to all kinds of hardships. Lewis never comes out and boldly says, but he wonders, by implication, if pacifists aren't really just cowards hiding behind a philosophical idea. Lewis sums up an answer to the title of the essay, Why I'm Not a Pacifist, saying, if I tried to become a pacifist, I should find a very doubtful factual basis, an obscure train of reasoning, a weight of authority, both human and divine, against me, and a strong ground for suspecting that my wishes had directed my decisions. Which, the way that he said the ending there is the pure epitome of what biblical understanding has become. So I'm going to read it again, because this is how we should, in my opinion, approach every moment that you're in the Bible or listening to somebody talk about the Bible, including me. Check me to it. He said this again. He said this. Take pacifist out. If I tried to become a pacifist, if I tried to study anything in the Bible and make a direct understanding of it, generalize it, I should find a very doubtful factual basis, an obscure train of reasoning, a weight of authority, both human and divine, against me, and strong grounds of suspecting that my wishes had directed my decisions. That is eisegesis. That is improper hermeneutics. And it is so beautifully said. And this is why it was one of the greatest. One of the greatest. All right, real quick. What do you guys got here? Yeah, God bless hermeneutics. That's 100%. I need to have a t-shirt that says God bless hermeneutics. Jesus' opening move is turning the other cheek. His finishing move will be utter destruction. Yes. And I hope somebody goes more into that, the revelation thing. I don't, and I won't, because I publicly talk about how I don't put weight in revelation. But if you are somebody who puts weight in revelation, you should be wildly anti-pacifism, because revelation is insanely aggressive. It's insanely wartime. It's very, very, very much not pacifist. I can't do that because I don't put much weight in it. But I don't feel like you need revelation to make a case against pacifism for Christians. But good God, man, if you are a revelation believer, that it should be, very much involved in your biblical life, then you cannot be a pacifist, because it's wild. I'm a realist, and I'm the first to admit that living the Jesus way of love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek is, humanly speaking, almost impossible. Mikkel, yes. Yeah, I mean, it is impossible. All the time, it is impossible. It's impossible if self-preservation is on your priority list. Yeah, and we'll get into some of those questions too, because I have some pointed questions of, well, what if this, what would you do? If in this scenario, what would you do? I do want to do this, though, actually, real quick. I'm going to do a poll because I want to see if any of us, believe the pacifist route. So should Christians be pacifists? Yes or no? Just out of curiosity, and no hate. So be honest. I am not on that train. However, I can understand why some people are. So it's totally fine. It's totally fine. All right. So that's C.S. Lewis. Now I want to do this. Okay, we will use this virtually anytime we try to answer any of these questions. What is a pacifist? Do we want to get up the definition? So our dictionary definition, a person who believes that war and violence are unjustifiable. That is the definition that we will go off of. If you have an alternative definition, just drop a link in there and I'll pop it up. But I would assume this is what probably most people think of pacifism. But I also give too much credit sometimes. So maybe there is a different view. But here real quick. So any time a Christian has a question, I mean, they killed it on the CO, gotquestions.org. They killed it. They nailed it. However, more often than not, I despise reading from this website because it's wildly biased, insanely biased. It's so biased. There's absolutely no nuance whatsoever. And again, just a recap for anybody who wasn't with us the day that we did this, you can always find out what the bias of a Christian organization is by going to their website, go to About Us, and then there will be our values or our beliefs or something like that, and read through what it is. You can very quickly see what denomination do they fall under. That's a bias. And what theological bend do they have? Arminianists, open theists, Calvinists, whatever. That's a wild bias. That's a crazy bias. So once you get the theological view, then you get the denominational view, then you know exactly why they're saying what they're saying. So what did Jesus mean when he instructed us to turn the other cheek? Jesus says, we already read it. So in the section of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, in which he commands us to turn the other cheek, he addresses the need for true transformation versus mere rule keeping. It's not enough to obey the letter of the law. We must conform to the spirit of the law as well. Much of the material surrounding Jesus' command to turn the other cheek complements the nature of his coming. Does it? Which was characterized by mercy, sacrificial love, and long-suffering towards sinners. I suppose it depends on what they mean by the nature of his coming. I would agree, depending on what exactly they mean by that. Yeah, but I guess beside the point. At the same time, Jesus affirms the last is first principle upon which the kingdom of God is based. For instance, he tells us to go the extra mile for someone who abuses us in 5:41 Matthew, and to love and pray for our enemies instead of holding enmity against them. And verse 44, in summary, Jesus is saying we need to be pure inside and out, and as accommodating as possible for the sake of a lost world. Within reason, though. Within reason. Biblically and just logically, within reason. A word about the slap that Jesus says we should endure. Jesus here speaks of personal slights of any kind. The slap or the smiting, as the KJV has it. God, I love reading smite in the KJV. Have y'all seen the music videos this one guy, and I think it's his wife, do about like the KJV? They're phenomenal. They're so good. He like pretends that he's KJV only. I don't think I think he's making fun of it, but they're songs. And his wife is like a normal Christian, like Baptist or Protestant or whatever. And she's like singing, talking to him, and he's like singing back arguments, but in KJV. It's phenomenal. They kill me. I'll try to find some of them, put them in the Discord after. Anyways, does not have, I gotta read it again. The slap or the smiting, as the KJV has it, does not have to involve literal physical violence. Even in our day, a slap in the face is a metaphor for an unexpected insult or offense. Did someone insult you? Let him, Jesus said. Are you shocked and offended? Don't be. And don't return insult for insult. Turn the other cheek. Insult for insult is talked about several times throughout the New Testament. The concept of a non-physical slap in the face, using different terms, is talked about numerous times in the Bible. I think that much is relatively clear that, yeah, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And it's something that I am a work in progress on, because sometimes the people on the internet, I slap back. I posted one recently because I couldn't tell if I slapped back or if I dealt with it with grace. And people on the internet told me I didn't deal with it as gracefully as I thought I did. So I am working on these things. But that is a biblical principle. I fully believe it. Matthew Henry's comment on this verse is helpful. He said, suffer any injury that can be borne for the sake of peace, committing your concerns to the Lord's keeping. And the sum of all is that Christians must avoid disputing and striving. If any say flesh and blood cannot pass by such an affront, let them remember that flesh and blood shall not inherit the kingdom of God, and those who act upon right principles will have most peace and comfort. It comes out of a commentary on Matthew 5:38. Turn the other cheek does not imply pacifism, nor does it mean we place ourselves or others in danger. Jesus' command to turn the other cheek is simply a command to forego retaliation for personal offenses. So they got it. They got it. I don't read these ahead of time. I just grab the link, just to be clear. So sometimes I disagree with them and sometimes I agree with them. I agree. I agree. He was not setting government foreign policy. He was not throwing out the judicial system. Crimes can still be prosecuted, and wars can still be waged. But the follower of Christ need not defend his personal rights or avenge his honor. Why else would that make sense biblically? Because the use of these terms specifically, personal rights or avenge one's honor, where does that come from? What inside of you emits that? It's pride. It's arrogance, for the most part, right? If I'm out with Kat and somebody offends her in front of me, my initial instinct is to slap the shit out of them. That's just like, that's what will immediately pop into my head. And in a very violent way. However, should I do that? Like, one, no, because it creates a more unsafe environment for her. Where if somebody just insults her and we leave, she stays relatively safe. In culture now, I think some women would look down on the man for doing that. However, just in like reality, walking away is probably the right move. However, pride and arrogance of somebody offending my woman makes me want to slap the shit out of them to defend her honor and to defend my pride. But all that really does is create a more potentially violent environment for the woman I'm trying to defend to be in. So it's counterproductive. There's a time in history when a man would feel compelled to protect his honor against one who slandered him or otherwise besmirched his character. The offended party would challenge the offender to a duel. Swords, firearms, or other weapons were chosen, and two enemies would face off. In most cases, senseless bloodshed ensued. Samuel Johnson wrote in favor of the practice of dueling. A man may shoot the man who invades his character, as he may shoot him who attempts to break into his house. The problem is that invasion of character are exactly what Jesus told us to tolerate in 538. Turning the other cheek would have been a better option than dueling, and it would have saved lives. I don't like to agree with it, but I do agree with it. Retaliation is what most people expect and how worldly people act. Turning the other cheek requires help from on high. Responding to hatred with love, ignoring personal slights, display the supernatural power of the indwelling Holy Spirit, and may afford the chance to share the gospel. Jesus, whoa, what did I miss? Jesus never draw lines on race, occupation, or anything like that. His lines were always drawn on faith, trust, loyalty, understanding, ideas, etc. Yeah. Mikkel said, oh, but the Jonah's pacifist peacemaker begrudgingly way. I'm more akin to that. Pacifism is a temporary strategy, in my opinion. It can't be a permanent strategy, or else we'd be extinct. What is that true though? Or is that even that circumstantial? Are there scenarios, I guess, where pacifism as a permanent strategy would be successful? And maybe there's things where pacifism is never a good strategy. I mean, one example is like if somebody immediately imposes threat on you or your family, I don't think any second of pacifism is probably a smart strategy. But in other cases, I could see the opposite. I think it's more circumstantial than like whether pacifism as a concept is either always good or always bad, or for a certain amount of time good or a certain amount of time bad. I think it's totally circumstantial. I am more a Jonah pacifist peacemaker in a begrudging way, hate kind of love hate kind of way. They put the video in the chat along with how many minutes you should fast. Yeah, I got it ready, Rodriguez. I got your video right here. We're 6 minutes and 30 seconds in. We'll run it. I hope you vetted it properly, because I did not listen to it. I had to just get it right there, ready to go. Charlie, just an important distinction for this conversation. I see. What would you do versus what would be right to do? Yeah, I mean, that's the question, really, right? If you boil everything down, that's exactly what the question is. Yeah, 100%. Shouldn't those things be the same thing? No, should they? Well, I mean, they should. Yes. Rewind. Yes, they should be. But do we ever do what we should do all the time? No. Remember that guy in the dealership waiting area? The guy in the dealership waiting area, the lady in the car in the Walmart parking lot that almost hit you. Yeah, there's been a few times. Give them a warning, turn the other cheek. Oh, you mean recently in the car dealership? Yeah, that was a good example. That was a great example where I did nothing. And yeah, it was painful. Give them a warning, turn the other cheek. If they still aggress toward you, then all bets are off. Well, I don't know. Are we still confusing the concept then? I mean, turn the other cheek is not a testament to violence. It's not, because I don't think there's any scripture to back the idea that if somebody physically assaults you, you are to do nothing. So I think let's clear that up real quick. Is there ever a time where somebody can physically assault you or somebody that you love and you should do nothing about it? Is there ever a time for that? Because my argument is that the turning of the cheek has nothing to do with violence at all. I don't think it has anything to do with violence in the slightest. So I think the turning of the other cheek is a completely separate concept. And I think if you look at the concept of violence, the Bible, Old Testament a lot and New Testament a little, seems to back the idea that there are definitely times for violence. And there's really no explicit directive away from violence when there is an aggressor. Charlie said, there are a few situations I can think of where I would probably kill or do something violent if I was put in this situation, but I don't think I could stand before God and say I did nothing wrong. So you think even if you committed violence in a justified scenario, you still think you'd be wrong? So then that becomes a moral conversation. Is it moral to kill somebody who is about to kill your wife or husband? Or is that immoral? That to me becomes a very moral question. Ghost, I'm going to drop an invite just in case you did want to come up. No, you don't have to, though. I just don't want to forget. That's an interesting question. So I think a couple things there. The turning of the cheek, does it have anything at all to do with violence? That's question one. I would say no, but you could easily disagree. The other question is what Charlie's saying, and I think that's a fabulous question. That is a moral question. There are a few situations where he would commit violence or kill somebody if he was put in the situation, but still he doesn't think that he'd be able to stand before God and say he did nothing wrong, which means that would indicate that he feels some kind of moral guilt or believes that God has some kind of moral code against that, even if he did it in a justified setting, which I would disagree with. I think I see Charlie's point. What's the right thing to do? Let's say God's way. Let's say God's way versus what would I do? Self-serving, self-centered way. Is it self-serving or self-centered to kill somebody who's about to kill you? Kind of. Is it justified though? Or would you be making a moral slip? Would you be acting in an immoral manner to kill someone who is about to kill you? Guaranteed. Pulls a gun to your head, they're about to kill you, and you're able to kill them first. Is that immoral? Is the question. I don't think it is. I don't think I would have any problem.
I don't think so.
Right? I don't think I'd have any problem standing before God. If somebody walked into my house, and this was one of my questions. If somebody walked into my house, I have a 7-year-old daughter and I have Kat. If they came in here with the intention to even just to harm them, but to kill them, I would have no problem ending their life. Zero. None. And I'd feel 100% fine about it. It's an interesting question, though. I honestly didn't think about that specific kind of take there of whether, even in what you call a justified setting, is it immoral? It's very interesting. Charlie said, I'll also add, I think that a lot of the martyrs in Christian history would have been kind of dumb laying down their lives if pacifism is totally wrong. It's another interesting question or concept. So
I was going to bring up the breaking into the house with the wife and the kids thing, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it's like it's a go-to. It's the easy one. I had another one though, I think.
It's a pretty plausible scenario too, especially coming up in the future.
Oh, very.
I think
very, yeah. What about the martyrs, Ghost? That's interesting. I think a lot of the martyrs
What
in
about
Christian, he said, I think a lot of the martyrs in Christian history would have been kind of dumb laying down their lives if pacifism is totally wrong. I think that's more of a question of why. Why did they do it? I don't think it was due to pacifism.
Well, we're still talking about them now. Maybe it was to be remembered. Maybe it's a bigger cause than just because, like, someone breaking into your house and you got your family there, that's a more private matter and it's not being witnessed by thousands of people.
Sure.
So I think there's a difference in that.
What I mean, so Charlie and I guess Ghost too. Why did they let themselves get killed? It's to me, it's loyalty. They did it out of loyalty for God. Like in most, obviously not all, but in most of the famous cases of martyrs, they were being told they had to say something that was not true. In my opinion, that goes back to Charlie's kind of moral question. If in order to save yourself, you profess that Jesus is not God, then I'd have a problem standing before God after they killed me anyways, because they probably would have. But if I choose to die in defense of God, I wouldn't call that pacifism at all. It's a very different circumstance to me. Do you disagree, or do you see it different?
If someone like had a gun to your head and say Jesus isn't real or whatever, like
Yeah, so I mean, in the case of the martyrs, some of the most famous ones, they would grab and they'd have them publicly proclaim that Jesus Christ is not Lord, and so they refused to do that, and so then they were killed. And
I
Charlie's
think it's
kind of
good to refuse to do it
no,
if people
exactly,
are watching.
but is it pacifism? I don't think so. I don't see that as
No,
pacifism.
because it serves like a bigger purpose.
A person, yeah, no, that Charlie. So even just by definition, I think we can factually debunk that one. The definition of pacifism is a person who believes war and violence are unjustifiable. Martyrs laying down their lives in defense of their faith and loyalty to God says nothing about their belief in war or violence. If it was, I suppose, if they grabbed a martyr and they said, "You are going to fight this Roman soldier to the death," and they said, "I'm not going to do that," and so they just let themselves get killed, that would be an example of pacifism. But in the case of most martyrs, they got killed for a totally different reason. So I think we could rule pacifism out. Charlie said there are a good number of martyrs that thought it would be better to lay down their lives for Christ rather than try to overthrow the system that was oppressing them, the Roman Empire. I think the term pacifism is kind of unhelpful since most pacifists don't actually think it's good to stand around and do nothing. I think that gets a little bit too subjective because I think we'd have a hard time saying what most pacifists do or believe. But the first one, a good number of martyrs thought it would be better to lay down their lives for Christ rather than to try to overthrow the system that was oppressing them. I still don't think I would, and I mean you're free to disagree, but I would still say that that doesn't represent pacifism. They had it was a pride for God. It was a loyalty to God. They weren't willing to, renounce their faith. Rodriguez, I pulled you up. If it's the aggressor has a bigger gun than you, turn the other cheek. If you value your life. Plot twist, be uncomfortably kind when possible. The guy I mentioned at the dealership was very clearly judging Joe based on his appearance. I stared at him as he eyed Joe, smiling. Yeah, that stuff just doesn't bother me anymore either. I then asked him how he was doing on such a lovely morning. He knew I caught him and got my point across. Yeah, I don't know. I've been very good since I've been with you, Kat. You came into my life when I got things together. All right, Rodriguez, I tried to bring you up. It looks like you turned it down, so just raise it again if you're trying to get up. All right, is there anything else here? DuckDuckGo. Scott, why
I think
DuckDuckGo?
I
What's up?
think when the martyrs refused to deny Christ, I think it was a strategic move because if you have witnesses and everyone is seeing that, wow, these people are not denying him even at the threat of death, then it adds validity to what they're saying and what they believe, and it
Oh,
also puts fear into the oppressor.
for sure. For sure. Do you think they were thinking that though? Like at the time?
Uh,
Do you think they were like
hmm.
thinking all that through, or do you think they were just like stubbornly? I will not do that. I know that this is true. I'm more fearful of the consequences should I do what you're telling me to do, more so than you killing me. How you're gonna kill me?
Well, I think they genuinely believed. So for them, I don't think it was like a big deliberation. I think they just
Yeah,
felt that, yeah, I mean, I know who I serve, etc.
yeah. That's how I kind of see it too. Revelation 6:9. When the Lamb broke the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of all who had been martyred for the word of God and for being faithful in their testimony. Oh, DuckDuckGo gave a good definition of pacifism. Doesn't Google own DuckDuckGo now?
Oh God, I never
Oh,
heard that. I
DuckDuckGo
hope not.
is, I don't know if it's Google for sure, but it's absolutely corporate. You can't trust
They're
DuckDuckGo anymore.
compromised.
Yeah, 100% for years. You got to use Brave. Brave is still safe to my understanding.
I use Brave.
Pacifism. Yeah, Brave's good stuff. Pacifism is the opposition or resistance to war, military, or violence. The word pacifism was coined by the French peace campaigner, whatever, and adopted by other peace activists as the 10th Universal Peace Congress in Glasgow in 1901. A related term is ahimsa, which is a core philosophy in India or in Indian religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Interesting. Was that the definition, Scott, or did you get something else? I mean, that was much more detailed. Oh, it's Wikipedia's definition. If you had something else, send the link, Scott. All right, did I miss anything? Or Ghost, do you have anything else before?
I mean, I think it's possible to kind of hate the concept of war, but also at the same time realize that it has a place depending on who's the aggressor and if you're trying to, I don't know. I think who the aggressor is an important aspect to calculate when it comes to is war good or not.
Yeah, and I think it gets muddy though. So if you take two obvious ones. Take the Middle East, because it seems like we're about to get down with them again. You take the Middle East, which is predominantly Islam. They have their own moral function, moral foundation, religious beliefs, all of that jazz. And then in the US, I mean, now we don't really have the Christian morals or values or beliefs, but we kind of have this melting pot of United States effed up subjective morals that are there. They're there. A lot of us don't agree with them, but they're there. So we have these two different entities that each believe they have the truth, not very different than religion in general, and we're willing to die for it. It kind of removes any of the, like, I don't know how to say this. It's all subjective to a point. Like we believe that God's morals are objective, but not everybody believes that. And Islam believes that Allah's morals are objective. So to them, they feel justified in their killing of us because they believe that we are of the devil and we're not of Allah. And in the US, pretend we're a Christian nation, we would feel the same way. So I think, does that not kind of remove the...
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm saying? I'm having a hard time expressing it, but it's subjective. We're fighting for subjective truth, but to each group, it's objective. So each group feels justified.
On one level, I think what it is we want to do X, but we can't say that outright, so we have to come up with silly reasons as to why we're doing what we're doing overseas.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think it is. We have to be able to point out the BS and identify it and say, no, we're not over there because of that. We're over there because of this.
Yeah.
Like we did with after 9/11 and stuff. Like there were a segment of people who knew that the WMDs was nonsense.
Yeah, for sure.
But those people were shouted down as conspiracy theorists and whatnot. So it's just a battle of knowledge, man. I don't know.
That would be the same
Perspectives.
thing. Yeah. It'll be the same thing. Yeah, it's all perspective, right? The Charlie said the lil gremlin in me. If Jesus says peacemakers will be called sons of God, what does that make war makers? But what is a peacemaker? I think you'd have to really define that first. What is a peacemaker?
A diplomat, a philosopher. Like Marcus Aurelius said, we need philosopher kings, and we don't have them. So here we are.
Hey guys, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to cook dinner and do like a million things, but I was still on the martyrdom thing. So what part are we on exactly?
I mean, if you have something for martyrdom, you can throw it out real quick. We haven't really moved on from any of that.
I mean, I feel like, I had thrown up the scripture earlier where it talks about martyrdom. Hang on, I'm remembering this.
In Revelation, I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was also a portion in 10, but it was just kind of like they were still asking for justice. It's not like they were complete pacifists and like, let it go. It almost kind of reminded me with the whole scenario of Cain and Abel, where God confronts them and he's like, "Hey, your brother's blood is crying out to me." So,
yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge social justice person in case you guys haven't figured that out already. But yeah, so yeah, I'm most definitely not for pacifism. I feel like if anything, it's probably needed amongst us, like the brethren.
I mean, yeah. So on a personal basis, you mean?
No, not necessarily a personal basis, but just with our families, with
Well, so
our,
interpersonal. I mean, like from
right.
me
Yeah,
to
that's
Ghost
fair.
to you, like our group here, for instance.
Yeah, in our homes with our spouses, our children, and
Yeah,
whatnot. But your boss, I mean, I mean, of course, certain things are, you know, different scenarios, um, but yeah. Oh, vengeance is the Lord. Yeah, that's true. Um, I don't know that that's a good verse for pacifism. I think I keep thinking about Ecclesiastes where it talks about like a time and a season for everything.
mm-hmm.
Context is definitely key. I'm very grateful for Martin Luther King Jr. And everything he did, despite the fact that he got a lot of pushback in this area, probably because of verses like this being taken out of context.
The revelation or vengeance.
No, 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 no. Turn the other cheek, vengeance, and different things like that. I felt really bad one time. There was a client where she was a Muslim, and her leader, I forget what it's called for them, basically didn't help her when her husband was being violent. So then she tried to go to the Christian church for help. And unfortunately, when she did, this verse was used out of context where basically the pastor had told her, like, hey, if your husband is beating you, you need to learn to turn the other cheek.
Yeah, see
Well,
that's just an example of
and I hope to
Christians
God
being
she's still
shit.
alive. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
hope to God she's still alive.
that's all that is. Yeah. There's so I guess this it'd be a good time for a recap. I have learned, and you guys believe whatever you want. I have learned turning the other cheek has nothing to do with violence at all. He's not talking about violence. It wasn't the context. There's no
Right.
surrounding context that makes it appear that way. There are other points where Jesus talks about violence, and there are other places more so where he insinuates violence and that it is permissible in certain cases. Then if you aggregate beyond it to the epistles and other letters, and then outside of the canon, whether you like it or not, there is much more data that would make us believe that violence is situational and circumstantial, and that you do have some kind of responsibility to protect your loyalty to God. You have a
I
responsibility to protect your family and to protect the community, but more than anything, the innocent, which to me is women and children. So anything like that is just on its face bullshit to me. Where that's just
so
people
wait
not
a second.
understanding.
So is it only in the realm of protection? Because I mean, the whole civil rights movement could be seen not necessarily as a direct, you know, response to protection. It's not like someone broke into your house.
Well, protection, I mean, I don't want to get too into anything political, but protection is anything where somebody who's, I guess, how do I say it in like a general sense? Protection isn't just if somebody comes in your house, you do something to them. If somebody is being, I'm trying to be real careful with the way I say this. If
Yes,
if
please do.
if an individual or a group of individuals are being treated in an immoral manner, protecting them can look a bunch of different ways. It can be diplomatic. It can be violent. There's a lot of different ways that can look without on purpose, without getting specific or political. That can look a lot of different ways. So if a certain group of people is being put down in a way that's immoral from a Christian
Mhm.
perspective, then
Right.
Christians, per my understanding of the Bible, would have some kind of responsibility to fight against that. That may be violent, it may not.
No, yeah. And one thing that I think kind of comes to mind when it comes to that is like if you look at Egypt, right? The only time God unleashed horrific, ungodly plagues would have been over slave owners refusing to release slaves.
Sure. And I mean, another good
Um,
example that is less close to home for a lot of us would be Rome, and like Pope Rome, and the early movement of the church outside of Catholicism. A lot of them were burned at the stake. A lot of them were murdered because they were trying
right.
to free common people into being able to learn about the Bible. outside of the control of the Catholic Church. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying either. I do want to do this before we get too far off base, though. Ruth said something that I think will sum a lot of this up in a really good way. She said, turning the other cheek is a summary of verses 38 through 48. Nowhere does it mention defending your life. Go the extra mile, forgive debts, be a model prisoner, which just pushes more on the concept of the aggregated principle that we're given in the Bible is that on a personal level, you are to metaphorically turn the cheek. That if Ghost or Rodriguez comes on here right now and insults me, like you guys did to me 2 Sundays ago at a freaking Bible study, I am to turn the other cheek. I am not to insult you back. What?
I said we love you, Joe, no matter
I know. But I'm not to hit back. You're not to hit back. If somebody,
okay.
I mean, I get lit up on the internet every day, all day, every day. Horrible things are sent, wild things are sent to me in direct messages. I'm not to hit back. And 99% of the time, I don't. 1% of the time, I definitely do. And honestly, it feels really good, but I know that I shouldn't do it. So you should not hit back. That's the principle. That's the idea. That's the concept. Outside of that, there's, in my opinion, until somebody presents a good case, I don't think there's any reason to believe that war, should it be a moral war, is not justified. What is a moral war? Well, what is the reason? Ghost was just talking about some of the very immoral concepts of war, or examples of war with the WMDs in Afghanistan. That whole thing, I would call that an immoral war. If 9/11 was an inside job, if and getting us to go to war for that, where a bunch of young men and women lost their lives, that would be an immoral war. Would that be their fault? No, but the people who knew the truth and sent them to war, I would hope, are going to answer to God. And those people, like what Charlie was saying, I would hope that if they ever actually stood in front of God, they would feel a massive pit inside of them because it was immoral. But if you go to war because perhaps your country is being invaded or destroyed from the inside, and you choose to go to war over that, that would be potentially a morally justified war. And I think that's kind of the differentiation. Forgiving debts, biblically, is said to do. But is there a line? If he said, what do you say? If you get sued and you take your tunic, he takes your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. Okay, what if you get sued for that, and then you get sued for something else, and then you get sued for something else, and every time it's a wrongful suit, is there ever a line where you're like, okay, no, I'm not dealing with this shit anymore?
Yeah, and I think the video that I had sent kind of explained that, because I know Ruth kind of, brought some things up, but I'll kind of reference back to that, because a lot of that is cultural, which is why I love and value hermeneutics.
Yeah, a lot of that is culture. All right, then we'll hit the video real quick. Ghost, do you have anything before she sent it's like a 2-minute video?
No, I'm curious.
All right, let's do it then. All right. So this is what turn the other cheek really means from that theology teacher.
A human doormat. It's getting people a little bit uncomfortable so that they can think about the injustice taking place. And then the first example that Jesus gives us is probably the most misunderstood directive that Jesus gives us in the New Testament. Jesus says, if someone strikes you on your right cheek, offer your other one, offer them your left. That's typically interpreted as walk away. Well, creative resistance isn't walking away, it isn't running away. So what exactly is Jesus saying when it comes to turn the other cheek? I'm going to demonstrate this to you using Sprocket the dog. Now, all of these situations involve a superior and an inferior. A soldier forcing a citizen, someone suing you and you losing the lawsuit. It could be a master and a slave. It could be an adult to a child. It could be a teacher to his pupil. It could be a husband to his wife. The proper way to reprimand an inferior is to take your right hand and with the back of your right hand, slap them across the right cheek. That's how you reprimand inferiors. Jesus says, offer him your left cheek. So now with the left cheek, I'm in a different type of situation as the assailant. I could take my right hand and smack him, but the problem with that, a first century man doesn't fight that way. Men today don't fight that way. That's typically a way a woman fights.
Sometimes you have to slap them in the face just to get their attention.
So if a woman is disrespected, she might take her palm and smack you across the face. Men don't fight that way. Imagine Rocky Balboa slapping his opponent.
You're better than that!
I could take my left hand and backhand him on the left cheek like I did before with my right hand, but that's a social faux pas in first century Palestine. You don't, no matter what nationality you are, you don't raise your left hand above your belt. The left hand was considered a dirty hand. Okay, your left hand was only used for cleaning. It was only used for wiping yourself since they didn't have toilet paper. It would have been a cultural faux pas for me to write, to eat, to wave with my left hand in the first century. So certainly I'm not going to think about hitting this person, hitting my inferior with my left hand. The thought never would have crossed my mind. And if I did, I would be made fun of. Well, I have one option left. I could punch him. The problem is with this maneuver, with this hook maneuver, is that this is the way two equal men fight. This is not the way a superior would reprimand an inferior. This is the way two equal men fight. Even if I were to hit Sprocket, Sprocket's status has now been raised. And let's say I hit Sprocket and I knock him out. Even though he might be a KO on the ground, he still won the fight. Because he came out of the fight with more dignity, with more status than what he had going into that fight. For a second or two, I didn't know how to fight. I was off my bearings. I was knocked off my feet a little bit. And that's an opportunity for metanoia. And again, as if the enemy, if the assailant's not feeling it, maybe anybody watching the fight would. And one more way that Jesus dealt with his enemies was up on that cross in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." If that's not a compassionate response to dealing with one's enemies, I don't know what is.
Interesting. I like that. That was good. That was good. I've never seen him before. Is he active or is this like an old channel? It's very interesting. Be your good wolf side, not your bad wolf side. What's so you cannot protect people at the expense of other people, though. So that's true. It's difficult when you get into the what are you protecting who from? Oh, so wow. So 61% said no, we should not be pacifists, and 38%, that's way higher than I thought. That makes me really happy, actually. I'm glad to see that. I thought this was going to be very one-sided. It's nice to see that it's not. Send Sprocket to jail. You cannot protect people at the expense of other people. Can you not? Isn't any act of... So, again, let's go to the obvious. Someone comes in my house. Cat's in my house. My daughter's in my house. They come into my house. So let's say 3 men come in here with nothing but bad things they want to do. I, with all my love and wisdom and humility under God, get a gun and come downstairs and I shoot them all point blank in the face. Is that not at their expense? So I think true. But if they're an aggressor, would be, at least one potential way to justify that. I think there's a lot of cases where you protect someone at the expense of someone else. I think we just justify it. And I think maybe that's something that would need to be clarified. A lot of scenarios, actually, like the more I think about it, a lot of scenarios. NAP violations. Libertarianism enters the chat.
The non-aggression principle.
The non-aggression.
Are you familiar?
I saw some kind of reel on this at one point. No, if I Google it, will we get a good description?
It's become a meme, but I doubt Google will give you a good description of it. It's just basically if none of us aggress against each other, everything's great. And you have a right to not be aggressed against. But
Oh, yeah.
if someone aggresses against you, they give up their right to not be aggressed against.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what it is.
I mean, it sounds great.
Yeah, it's logical.
It's the way it should be. But
Yeah.
So I guess I've never seen anything serious on it. I think I saw somebody just kind of making a meme out of it. Yeah. It's the non-aggression principle is really a synthesis of 2 ethical statements. It is illegitimate for a human being to use aggressive violence against the person and property of another human being, and it is legitimate for a human being to use defensive violence to protect person and property. Yeah, I didn't know it had become like a whole thing. That's funny. That's
Yeah,
very funny.
because I mean the left, like I don't know if you want to say the dirtbag left or just some segment of leftism kind of made a meme out of it. I don't know why exactly.
Like making fun of it without understanding that they were,
Yeah.
like that it
Yeah.
was legitimate. Interesting.
Because it's self-evident. It's one of those things where it's like, sure, don't punch someone in the face if you don't want to be punched in the face.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems self-evident, which often gets lost for some people. Charlie did not vote in the poll, but I think the Christian should never be passive, but always attempt to be peaceful. You should never be passive. You're further than me. I think there are some scenarios where you should be passive. I think stupid things like Kat was explaining a time recently where I chose pacifism versus getting in this guy's face. Whereas other times in years past, Kat's seen me do other things. I think there are times for pacifism, but as a general, I think going back to the war thing, I don't think if I guess the non-aggression principle, I think if you're aggressed against and it's substantial enough that there's any fear at all of your safety or somebody's safety, there shouldn't be a fear again. I think you're justified in performing some kind of violence. I think they asked. That's why we say they asked for it. You asked for it. If you're willing to do that, you need to be willing to accept it. It kind of is just a self-evident kind of principle. It's not really that complicated. One day we will have to trade our cloak
think
for a
it's
sword.
complicated.
Why do you say that?
And to some degree, for example, I mean, maybe this is a Saturday topic, but I'm not a fan of, people who are like supporting Texas with the barbed wire, like, oh, they asked for it.
Yeah, no politics. Choose another example. No politics.
Fine.
Saturday for
Fine,
sure. But
fine,
yeah, no.
fine. Okay, fine. You break into my house. I totally get it. I totally get it.
What's an example where somebody does violence to someone else, but it's not right to do violence to them? And both parties are innocent. They didn't. Nobody effed his wife 3 years ago or effed his wife last week. There's no wrong was done other than this right now.
Okay, I was thinking more of as a parent, right? When someone like does something to your kid.
Well, that's justified, is it not?
I don't know. Maybe if you walk
damn.
in, right? If you walk in on it, yes, legally, and which I totally would say legality does not equal morality by far, 1000%. But apparently, if I don't walk in on it and a child reports later, can you explain that one to me?
Well,
I know where my mind goes. I know where my heart goes. But in terms of biblically, which my mind won't ever go there in the heat of it, but
biblically, there is no way to answer the question. Is the honest answer. You can gather a generalized understanding of what might be the right thing to do, but it's one of these things. There's no direct anything. So you have to kind of you gather it, which is kind of what it's what we're doing. So in smaller offenses, personal offenses where somebody calls your kid a stupid shithead, like no, you should not do anything about it. Maybe talk to them and just walk away. Pacifism. If somebody, very careful language, if somebody touches my daughter in any way whatsoever, I will light them the fuck up. Period. On principle.
Right. Unapologetically.
Unapologetically.
Okay, and this is whether you walk in on it or it's disclosed at a different time.
So it's obviously a little more complicated if it's later because you kids sometimes say things that aren't true. So yeah, they definitely do. There are times where kids have said things that are not true. I would say most kids telling something like that, and there's no history of them lying or making up stories or anything, like, yeah, you should believe the kid 100%. But to say no child has ever lied about being hit by an adult or something is bullshit. That's definitely happened. So all I'm saying is if you don't have proof, any way to prove it at all, it's a little more complicated. If somebody lied that I touched their kid and I never touched their kid and the dad came and tried to fight me, that would be a significant problem because I did not touch their kid. And the kid was just a little shithead. That's possible. Maybe it's not the most likely scenario, but it's possible. Whereas if I walk in on someone touching my kid, there is no question at all. So the other one, there's some kind of question a little bit. I'm not saying though, either way, my daughter doesn't lie. She would never just say something like that ever. So if she did it, I would absolutely do the same thing. Yes, it'd be no different. I might, in that scenario, try to take the legal route, honestly, because I didn't see it.
It will fail you, just so that you know. I'm
What's
just
that?
going to say that point. It's going to fail you if you take the legal route.
That's why
I'm
I
just
said
saying.
try. That's why I said try, because that would be
Yeah.
the first to at least try to do the quote unquote right thing. And also, again, big picture, to protect myself and her, because then I go to jail and then
Right.
she doesn't have a dad. So is that really
Or
still
you
the right
become
thing
a
to do?
refugee.
Yeah,
Or
or
you
that,
become a refugee.
or that.
It's
Either
like,
way, is that the right move? Because you could become separate from your kids. So in order to try to save your child, now she doesn't have a father or a mother. That's why in these things, so you're right. Some of these things do become complicated. For sure.
I think one of the things that kind of comes to mind is when Jesus was betrayed, for the silver. This isn't like the joke that we have on Discord with the whole Holy Spirit Judas thing.
Okay.
Um, but seriously speaking, right, where is it Peter who gets the sword and he's upset, right? Because they're there to take his Messiah. Understandably so, justifiably so, right? They're going to take away his Messiah. They're there to kill him. I believe it's justified. And he gets the sword, he cuts off the soldier's ear. And in the midst of, in my opinion, justification for the act, Jesus actually proposes something else and says, like, hey, let's not do that. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. And why this was a priority of Jesus, I will never fucking know. Um, but apparently, he cared enough to find the soldier's ear, in the dark, because we know it was in the dark, probably, on his hands and knees, sifting through the leaves or whatever to try to find this man's ear and gently put it on him. So I don't know. I kind of think of that scenario a lot also when it comes to pacifism.
Yeah, I think that's a valid thing to think about. Yeah, it's a scenario that's used a lot in like anti-pacifism, the die by the sword. Is it greater than other indications of war or violence? I would
I mean, I think
personally
a
say
lot of
no.
people, yeah. But I think a lot of people kind of use it the same way, right? Like Peter thought he was trying to protect his Messiah. Aren't a lot of these religious wars based on the same thing?
Well, he was protecting. I mean, I get what you're saying, but so the biggest thing for me with that specific section of scripture is that he's protecting literally God, and he's protecting him in a physical manner. So then this takes you
Right.
into la land of theology, where what would have happened, or is it possible for it to happen, if Christ was killed during some skirmish that Peter started? What are the theological implications? And it takes you down a million different rabbit holes of theology. Well, is it possible
Yeah.
for Christ to die outside of what was planned for him? Is there free agency in that, or was that all predetermined? Blah 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 blah. So it gets really complicated because of that. But I think that also really simplifies the passive concept of it.
Right.
Is that was in a very specific scenario with the literal human form of the deity. So perhaps it's not what all of the concept of pacifism should be based on, because it was very, very, very specific and included the deity itself. It's tough though. Either way, it's tough. It's a hard one to try to pull the concept of being passive or not being passive from that alone is really tough to me personally.
I agree. No, yeah. Like I said, I think about it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because I did not, and I don't even have it in the notes. So that was I appreciate you doing that. So you guys are spinning me right now. Christians should never be passive, but always attempt to be peaceful. And then what do you say after that? Only reason I didn't vote is because pacifism implies doing nothing rather than refusing to be violent. Isn't pacifism technically refusing to be violent? Isn't that what our definition was? Pacifist is a person who believes that war and violence are unjustifiable. That's a choice though. That's an active motion to choose
I
against war. What were you gonna say, Rodriguez?
no, I think the other question I have is a lot of this we need to understand, right? Is context. Context is key, right? Which is
Yeah.
why I kind of brought up hermeneutics earlier. And unfortunately, especially when it comes to the Old Testament, a lot of this is based in theocracy. So I guess the concern that I have is taking things that are descriptive and using them as prescriptive for the United States and war, or other countries in war. We're not a theocracy. Those promises, those um, you know,
So take
some of
that
that
out. Just morality. What about just morally? So take the U.S. out specifically, and take theocracy out, and just war against morality. Should Christians, as a in a general sense, even though we're all different, in a general sense, biblically, without theocracy, without specifically the United States, should we be pacifists in a wartime where we feel we are on the objective moral side or not?
I think we always feel that. I think that's another problem in of itself. We
Yeah,
always think we're right. We never think that
agreed.
God is on a different side, which I'm not even going to get into that. But
But then
um,
could he be? Could he be? Because if God was on a different side, it means we're following the wrong God. Or
well,
he
yeah, I think the
right?
problem is that it's not a matter of us following God. I think we seem to be under the, belief that that we are always right and God is on our side, as opposed to, we are being on God's side. So I
I
don't think there's
totally
much.
agree. Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree.
and I hate
100%.
saying that, but
It's the damn truth though. Yeah, it's God is on our side. And that's I mean, the cold hard reality is that the outside of the non-essentials, which are most of it, but the differences
right.
between non-denominational, or no, I'm sorry, the differences between different denominations of Christianity, including Orthodox and like Catholicism, most of way far most of the differences are non-essential, so they don't really matter. But there are some you could argue are essential that separate us. And God can't be on all of our side with all of those things. So
Right.
and the truth is probably nobody has it because there's too many variations now, and everybody's put God on their side with too many little different things. So the statistical probability is that nobody has it all right. So God really technically isn't on anybody's side. So that's what
Especially in the realm of politics and
it's one thing for sure. Yeah. But I think
and
morality is one too, because I mean, politics trickles down from a moral concept,
it should.
all of it. Yeah. But it
Yeah.
does. It's just a matter of whether it's your morals or mine, because they're all different now, which takes you back to the war thing. And then what is the war based off of? Well, objective morality. Well, what exactly does that mean? Because even within Christianity, we don't necessarily agree on what objective morality is anymore. So like,
I think the problem, which I've kind of voiced in the Discord before, which is why I try my best to not stand behind any politician like ever. Because if we kind of like hold up the mirror of scripture, right, in terms of qualifications, really no one is kind of upholding that standard. And I think because of that, we really need to kind of question and maybe be a little bit more introspective in terms of politics on when it comes to like whose side, excuse me, is God really on. Sorry, I have a lot going on right now.
you're good. I think either way though, you're gonna fail though. You're gonna fail. Even within Christianity alone, we don't agree. So how would we agree then with
Right.
people outside of it? I think it's an impossible thing. I think it's not. There's no world in which that ever happens outside of some magical event that happens, like the second coming, where all of a sudden we're split in two, where there are the unbelievers and there are the believers, and the believers are all totally on the same page because Jesus is down here and like, you're all fucking wrong. Here's what it is. We all good now? And then we all are like, yes, we're good. And then the other people are just on the other side. I think until something that dramatic happens that separates us in two, no more than two, I think this will never change. I mean, that's my opinion, but I don't see any
That's
logical
probably
conclusion.
fair. That's probably fair. Yeah, we're probably all going to be served. All of us are going to be served a huge piece of like humble pie, maybe
Yeah,
a couple pies.
for sure.
Um,
For sure.
I just hope that we're kind of willing to accept that, be in a place of humility. But
That's it.
anyways, yeah,
That's
I'll
it.
step back.
Thanks, Rodriguez. That's
Anytime.
a good point. Those are all good points, actually. The political thing is very tough, guys. It's very, very tough. I think the best you can hope for is a bunch of people who see a lot of things different, but like Christianity and denominations, where politically we can all get on enough of the same page where we can like run the country in a cohesive manner. I think perhaps it's too far gone, but this is a Saturday topic. So I want to go back to this. Hold on. Protect your own before protecting others. They literally tell you this before you take off on a plane. Fair enough. Light instruction. Non-political hypothetical. This is what I want. Non-political hypothetical. Is locking your doors and barring your windows considered aggression? I feel like that is not a trick question, but I feel like you are poking ideologies with a stick. The obvious answer is no. It is not. It is defensive. It is the opposite of aggression. But I can definitely see people in the world see locking your doors as a sign of aggression. I could definitely see it. Charlie said, Charlie, it's been very lovely to have you, just so you know. You've
Not
added
post
very
Richard
much to
Ramirez.
this. Wait, say again?
Richard Ramirez, no, he literally said that God, or I'm sorry, I can't believe I said that. Satan told him which doors to open and which were unlocked. So
Who was
yeah, no,
this?
that Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Oh my God.
I'm
Ugh.
serious.
I mean, I believe that you're serious.
No one remembers that.
He said
Okay,
that.
well, I'm doing delay.
Okay,
But
all right. I'll look it up. I don't remember.
oh yeah,
this. I don't
like
remember.
even on Netflix. But Richard Ramirez, yeah, he literally said Satan told him which doors were unlocked and started attacking people there, from there on out. And then
well, I mean, I don't doubt that. I think there are people who are. I mean, maybe he was a little psychotic, but I mean, I don't know. It's again like that's a different topic too. But I believe it in a way. I believe it.
Sorry, I just had to say that.
No, you're good. You're good. It's a good question, Ghost, but it's poking ideology. I get what you're doing. I see you. I like it. Mikhail, don't know, but pacifism is kind of unbiblical now that I ponder about it with you guys. Charlie has a point in that it implies inertia. Passivity. Don't forget Jesus turned the tables at the temple. Oh yeah, I said, what was that violent? What if an intruder wants my snacks? A truly violent act. Bada bing. At the end of the day, it's an ideology, spiritual war. Yeah. Yep. A truly violent act, but out of outrage because of the thievery in the middle of his father's house. I don't know, man. I don't see it as violent. It's aggressive. I don't see it as violent. But maybe I'm functioning off of an improper definition of violence. Maybe that's something I need to look at. My conceptual understanding of violence requires physical touch. But I guess, now that I say it out loud, that's actually not necessarily true nowadays. In the past, it was. Now it's not. Drones don't require that. Bullets don't require that. Ninja throwing stars don't require that. So maybe I need to reevaluate. Is hacking a server violent? Again, I would say no, but it's aggressive. But maybe, now you're making me wonder. What is the actual definition of violence? Behaving involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. Strength of emotion, or are you fucking kidding me? Strength of emotion or an unpleasant or destructive natural force. I mean, yeah, but I think this means so much more in 2024, where my words are now violent. So behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone. I don't know. Can hacking be seen as violent? Is it physical force? Is it
what if they steal all your money, therefore steal all your food by proxy?
But can we do definitions like that? Because then doesn't that open up a lot of doors that we probably don't want open?
I think I think we live in a time where AI in the digital world is more prominent than it ever was. So we're going to have to rethink a lot of these definitions that were written before these things existed.
You're not wrong. You're
You
not
know,
wrong. Yeah.
we need to revamp the whole thing.
Oh God, that's a terrifying thought. That's absolutely
Because think about it like this: what are the
Yay,
end results?
the
Oh,
end
go
what?
ahead.
No, all I said was, yay, Ghost. I completely agree with you on that. We
Oh,
got to
God.
Oh,
redefine.
sweet.
No. See, this is what I'm scared of. Because I think part of society wants to reevaluate definitions in a way that, again, totally personal, totally just me, arrogance, selfishness. I think we want to reevaluate the definitions of words to make communication fucking impossible. Excuse my language, but to make talking to each other impossible, which I feel like we've already done.
Well, this is a thing. I think we all have to have the same goal. If the goal is we have to come to an agreement about what these words mean, not because we want to gain power, but because we want to know.
but we
And
don't.
if someone hacks your bank account, takes your money, therefore you cannot eat, does it matter if they physically touched you? Because their intention was violent.
No, so I agree with you on this one. I'm 100% with you. I think as AI and as just as networks become something that can take from you physically, like, yeah, I completely agree. My worry is that we've already begun to redefine words, and it has not been a good thing. It's been a very, very
And
bad
that's
thing.
only for power. That's the thing.
True,
Like,
but that's reality. So you're saying if we're all
Yeah.
on the same page and have the same intentions, sure, but we don't live in that world. That's what scares me
No.
about it, because I agree with you 100%, and it scares the absolute shit out of me
I feel you.
completely. But you're right. There's no other way of doing it. It's going to have to happen. Rodriguez?
No, I was just going to say, I don't know that it's completely all for power. Some of it, I think, is legit miscommunication.
Some of it. So I think Ghost and I are kind of we're telepathically referencing some of the same things. One of the ones, but I think some of it I think is probably miscommunication. I think a lot of it is definitely for power. One example is when the Biden administration changed the definition of the word recession. It's actually defined a different way now because he put us in a recession, and they didn't want to admit that. And I'm heavily in the financial game. It's a huge part of my life, hours and hours a day, and that was a wild thing. The entire financial world was like, what the fuck is going on? Because every single accountant, every single CPA, CFA, they had gone through their entire school, their entire career with one definition of what a recession was, and then all of a sudden, Biden puts us in a recession, doesn't want to be in a recession, so they literally changed the definition of the word. That's just one example, but there are a lot. If you think culturally, and again, we're not going politics or cultural, but just very bland, very general. There are other examples of things that perhaps, Rodriguez, you might agree with. I might not. Ghost might not. I don't know. But there are things ideologically that have kind of been redefined. And depending on which side of the aisle you're on, that you either think that's a really good thing, which if you agree with those things, you're like, yeah, hell yeah, that's awesome, that's great. And other people are like, no, hell no, that's terrible, that's scary. That's kind of what I'm saying. So that depends on who you are.
Yeah, and Joe, I love you and I highly respect you, but you can't give a political example. Say, hey, we're not going to get into politics, but
I give a financial example. It's finance.
I get it. Okay, if that makes you feel better.
I'm still of the belief that politics and religion is the same thing. So
I agree.
Separating them is silly.
I'm not saying that they're like not related. I just think the problem is when you, well, never mind. But no, not never mind. The problem is when you yeah.
Go off.
You're good.
Is when it comes into like superiority and inferiority and God being on one side versus God being on another. And that's where it gets really problematic when it comes to politics and people aren't necessarily open-minded or willing to hear any other ideas.
I think the truly problematic part is there's no way to prove who's right. Because let's say I am the oppressor and Rodriguez, you are
That's
the
fair.
oppressed, and I am a Christian and you are a Christian, and I can validate everything I say with the Bible and you can validate everything you say with the Bible. That's kind of the reality we live in. So then what do you do? And this is why I have this. I'm the most positive person you'll ever meet. But and you guys probably don't think so because we all talk about this shit. But when it comes to things like this, I am the most cynical person in the world because I don't see any possible way out.
Well, I mean, rightfully so. I mean, I don't know that, the church, overall has really delivered anything that helps you believe otherwise. Um,
But I don't even think it's that. I mean, I ditched the church many years ago, even as a total independent. Outside of politics, but if you include politics, I've been all over the spectrum, wildly Democratic and liberal, and now wildly,
oh, wait,
Republican.
really?
Yeah, I've said that before. Yeah, for the
Well,
longest
I
time, I didn't.
said it, but I know I feel like I'm the one who comes off as like the anti everything any Christian says, which is weird because technically I'm actually pretty conservative biblically, I guess, just not politically.
Yeah,
Um,
which some people are. But that just kind of goes to push the point even further is where do you go from there? Where do you go? If even within Christianity, because kind of like Ghost said it, and he says it often, is that you truly cannot separate religion and politics. They are almost synonymous. Right? There are obvious differences, but politics cannot function without a religious basis. Whether you admit it or not, and whether you believe in a specific deity or not, it's all fueled by religion. It's just, what is your religion? And again,
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
have to have a deity.
the root. It's the roots of
It's
your beliefs
of
that
everything.
lead to politics,
Of everything.
and that I will say is true. Unfortunately, like I've always said before, I think you just have to play by the rules of politics. So, you guys have heard me use the example of abortion, and just trying to play by the rules of, trying to press the issue of when does life begin and kind of going that route, which I think is something we're just not really good at. Um, Now how that works with war, it's I think a little bit more challenging because if we're completely honest, there's a lot of Bible verses that can be pro and anti this war.
What war? I guess
What do you
Iran.
mean? What war?
Well, there's a lot of wars going
Sure.
on right now.
There is all of them. Let's just do that.
So is war? So like going back to, is war justified or not? Just in a general sense.
No, I don't know that. I'm not saying that part, but in this scenario specifically, let's leave Russia and Ukraine out of it and just kind of going on. Let's see what's going on with Hamas and Israel because that's kind of the highlight, in terms of theocracy goes. Um, I think that one's a little rough. Like I said, there's a lot of verses that can be pro and anti this war.
Would they not apply to a different war though?
That's fair. That's fair. But in terms of like, I know there's a lot of people who take scriptures literally. I mean, the word Israel is literally in the Bible,
Not
whereas in
talking,
Russia,
but they're not
huh?
talking about this Israel. I don't mean to cut. I'm
I,
sorry.
I'm aware. I mean,
But
I'm
I know you
aware.
don't, but that's what those people think. They think they're talking about Israel right now, and the Bible is not.
Huh?
Everybody needs to remember every bit of the
Right.
Bible was written with the assumption that none of us would exist. Sorry about your feelings, but nobody writing the Bible thought that any of us would ever exist. They didn't think my grandma would, or her great grandma, or her great great great
Right.
great great grandma. They thought this shit was gonna be over way before any of us. So I hate hearing about all that shit, pulling it from the Bible. You can do it, and I mean, I could be so dead ass wrong, but just exegetically, it's absolute trash. It's garbage.
Hey Joe,
Agreed.
could you send
Agreed.
me some stuff on that? Because I don't know.
What do you?
Where do you get that? Where do you get they didn't think that we'd be here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's all over the epistles. I can put some stuff together
Like
for you.
the book of Acts.
I mean,
goes,
Thessalonians. Yeah, Acts does it.
Yeah.
Thessalonians. I mean, one of the biggest problems in the Thessalonian church was the whole congregation, one, thought that that Jesus' second coming had already happened. They were terrified. There was a massive problem. And beyond that, there's writers in the New Testament, Paul in Acts, and then in Thessalonians 2, talks about how it hasn't come, but it's coming very soon. And he's talking within the context of what the congregants were worried about, which was in their lifetime. There's a lot of indications. So I can put some stuff together and send it to you. Yeah. And that it conflicts with a lot of, the end times theories and stuff, which is why I'm such a massive cynic on all that stuff, which I know you're super into. So yeah, let me, I'll put a bunch of stuff together, and maybe we get into that soon. That would be interesting.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, Enoch alluded to there being a very distant generation. So
That's different than the actual apostles, though.
But what does
no,
that mean?
I know.
But what does that mean?
Right.
What is distant? 'Cause even in the New Testament, they talk about, similar verbiage. What does that mean, though? I mean, that could be 3 generations.
That's one of those things that I'm not solid on. I have no idea.
It's because we don't have enough. Is it, my understanding on everything
Mhm.
I've ever seen is that we just there's nothing, so it's all becomes like assumption. I'm very open to being wrong. Just to be clear, I'm super open to being wrong, and I'm not like I have a problem with revelation. I have a problem with kind of more of the spiritual. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to say it.
Right.
I have like a very, and it's a flaw. It's totally a flaw, but I have a very like academic, and I mean like text academic view of the Bible and understanding of the Bible and the outside text. So it's all like just academic breakdown, and I have a really hard time putting too much weight on numerology. I love it. I find it super interesting, but I have a hard time putting weight on it because I feel like a lot of the just very blatant academic things kind of make it irrelevant. But then I get shown certain things and I'm like, damn, that's kind of a good point. And then I got to think about it. But I haven't been swayed yet. But maybe that would be a really good thing to do. I mean, maybe next Thursday we make an executive call and we gather as much information we can about, I don't know, I'll figure out how to word it, but basically the people during the time of Jesus, during the time of Paul, during the time of the writing of the Bible, and maybe even include some of the early Apocrypha. But to keep it simple, just the Bible, the canon. Did they think that there would be many generations? Or did they think that perhaps Jesus was coming within their lifetime? Because I'm definitely on that side. And
Right.
there's
I don't
obviously a
think
lot of people that disagree.
But does that matter?
It matters a lot for
And
interpretation. In my opinion, it matters a lot. It takes out
Mhm.
any interpretation of was this for us today? It removes it entirely. General principles,
okay,
values,
I
Christian
get it.
beliefs for Christians, like yeah, that applies. But
So in
anything
terms of
pointed,
descriptive versus is it prescriptive? Right.
I mean, kind of. I think basically like if the people during the time of Jesus or the writing of the New Testament thought that Jesus was coming back in their lifetime. I mean, another example is like the Thessalonians 2, where they were living a certain way out of fear that was going to happen while they were alive. There's a lot of indications just contextually where people were doing or behaving certain ways in the moment because they feared that the second coming was going to happen like in the moment, like while they were still living and breathing. The
Right. And I think
implications of
we still
that
do that
are
today.
wide. Sorry, what?
No, I think we still do that today, which I don't think it's I don't know that it's healthy because I feel like it's kind of more fear based.
We've always done that, which is part of why I'm a pessimist
Yeah,
about it and why I'm like not someone fun to talk to about like end time stuff because I'm like
fair.
everybody thought. And then on the other hand, I'm like, Jesus Christ, everything looks real fucked up right now. Maybe it is the end times. But again, everybody, in my opinion, starting back
Mm,
to when Jesus just died, thought that he was coming
right.
back. In my opinion.
Right.
But I think, I mean, we're way off topic. So let's get back and then wrap up. But let's do this. Let's do that because I think that'd be really interesting. So, Ghost, if you want to start gathering kind of the opposing view, Mikkel,
Well, I
I'm
don't
sure
know
you
if
know
it's
some.
too I don't know if it's too opposing. I just think like the Strauss-Howe generational theory could be an explanation for why everyone thinks this. It's because we go through this cycle for centuries. Like it repeats. It's just now that's repeating on a global scale, and there's nowhere else to go now. You know, it used to repeat in small settlements and then in cities and then in states and countries, but now it's global. So where do we go? What's bigger than the globe? Um, that's the way I see it.
So what? Okay, one question, and then let's rein it in because now I want to talk about this.
So-
What? But what? Why would it need to continue to grow?
I don't know if it needs to, but it has. If we look back at history, we can see how it started small and now it's global. So,
But I mean, we started with no ability to be global, and now we've reached absolute global reach. So I mean,
Mhm.
wouldn't that just be the end?
Yes,
Within
precisely.
our understanding of reality, like that would be the end. But does that mean like Jesus is coming back? Is that the idea?
I think so, yeah. Because there's nowhere to expand, so to speak, without us all just wiping each other off the face of the earth.
And you don't think that's a viable possibility?
I do, but it says no flesh would be saved unless he returns. So I think we're at that moment where wiping everyone out is possible. It was never possible before, but now it is.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what's in the back of my mind.
Is it theologically possible for you?
Yeah, because I have weird beliefs about Jesus and stuff. So yeah,
no,
it's super possible.
I feel you. Yeah, I think the only possible way around it, I guess, is interstellar, right?
Yeah, but if we can't define what a woman is, we're not going to the stars. You know what I'm saying?
Fair point.
So
Fair point. But okay, yeah, I want to do that. Let's do that. Did you say oh no?
Yeah, I was like, we're not supposed to get political.
No, we're not. He dropped it. We're done. All right. I'm gonna run through the chat real quick. I think I missed some stuff. As people were saying about Charlie. Ruth, if you're not gone but you're leaving, glad to have you. You brought some good stuff up tonight. Okay, maybe this is dumb, but I have a hard time finding a way to say it's possible to kill as a loving act, especially in something like war. A bit different in immediate defense. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. If somebody was threatening this whole country, I honestly would feel very similar to how I feel about my family. I wouldn't call myself a patriot, but I guess like maybe by definition I would fall in that category. But I have a lot of pride for what America was with all of its massive, wild faults. But when compared to other places, I think we didn't do it right, but I think we set a foundation of something that could have become something incredible. And I think it did, but it still had massive, massive, massive drawbacks. But if we could have done certain things different, again, without getting political, if we could have done certain things different and avoided certain things, I just take a lot of pride in what America was and could be still. So the point is, I think if somebody came in and threatened, if we were doing everything, because it's my opinion, my fantasy land, if America was living the way that I think is moral and the way that I think it should, and somebody came over here, another country came over here and threatened to take all of that away, enslave all the women, take all the kids, sell them into slavery, whatever, I think it would be a loving act to kill all of them, every single one. Who is a part of the threat? Innocent women and children, obviously no. But anybody who's a part of the threat, I do see that as a loving act. So I differ from you there, Charlie. But I get what you're saying. I can understand the view for sure.
I'm so sorry. I missed part of that. You were saying that you would understand the backlash of it.
No. I was saying I understand his view, that he doesn't believe. He said I had a hard time finding a way to say it's possible to kill as a loving act, especially in something like war. I was saying that if America was absolutely just in every way, and we didn't ever behave now or in the past in any way that was immoral, but were founded on morality, behaved only morally, and then another country came over here and tried to take it all away and sell you into slavery, Kat into slavery, take my kid and save her into slavery, I would feel it as a loving act to put a bullet through every single one of their heads, personally.
You don't think it's a just act?
Yeah, just would be my word, but based on his context, he used the word loving.
In terms of the other in terms of, I guess, maybe the so-called enemy in this circumstance.
What
Because I mean,
what they
hands,
were doing, or what do you mean?
the blood on their, if there's blood on their hands, right? So if those people whose blood is actually on their hands actually came back,
Came back. I mean, if they came here at all with the intention or after beginning,
right,
steal,
to overthrow.
yeah, I would see it as a loving act to protect everybody who is here.
But don't you think they would see it as a loving act also?
I don't know. I mean, in the hypothetical, I have no idea what their intentions are. They could just be coming to rape and pillage. I have no idea. But I possibly, yeah, hypothetically, maybe.
But isn't that what America did?
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. I was very specific to
No.
say if America was perfect in every possible way, absolutely moral, absolutely just, and absolutely tied to God in morality, I would see it as a loving act to kill anybody who tried to come take it away. And honestly, for me, it doesn't matter if they feel justified in it or not. That's what we were talking about earlier, where that's the difficult part about war is usually definitely not always. Some parties know they're doing something immoral. They just enjoy it. They're sick people. But a lot of the time, if it's religious specifically, both parties believe that they are doing the moral and just thing. So, but that doesn't change. That changes nothing for me because I believe what I believe about us. And if we were morally right with God, I don't care what they believe. I don't believe in Allah. So I don't care if you believe you're doing what you're doing with Allah. You're coming here and you're going to take and murder everybody here. I feel completely loving in doing it back.
Okay, that's interesting.
100%. 100%.
Got
I think regardless of kind of their view. Charlie, see the case of Hamlet's Queen Gertrude. I could have worded it, but all right. Satan is the key master from The Matrix. I have had it on a list to rewatch The Matrix. I haven't seen it since I was like very young. Thanks, Joe.
I think we all need to rewatch The Matrix.
Yeah, it's been on a lot. I'm gonna have my kid watch it with me. Oh, Charlie, you've been around for a while. Well, it's good to see. If you're interested, Charlie, there is a link at the top of the chat. Join the Discord. That's where all of these lovely people that you're talking to spend their time. Yeah, you've brought a lot, so I'm really glad you decided to come in. It's been good. Is it safe to say that violence requires physical damage? Yeah, see, that's what we were talking about. That was really interesting because Ghost brought up that perhaps in the past, perhaps not. I mean, definitely not in the future. I think the understanding of the definitions, or the understanding of the words are changing. So I think the way they're defined has to change. Charlie, I would say violence involves physical and emotional damage. I have such a hard time with the emotional damage bit of violence. I feel like there are other words we can use just because I feel like it's been abused by ideology. One other thing, don't have a source on hand. Sorry, I haven't really heard of any very early church fathers that thought war or violence was okay for Christians. Have you heard of any church fathers that thought war was not okay for Christians? Would be the question back. There is a link I have here. I have not been able to vet it properly, but I believe it has some commentary on tonight's topic using, I think, we didn't talk about it because I didn't have time to go through it, but I think it's commentary on what we're talking about tonight from some old church fathers. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, sorry. But the link I just put in the chat, I believe there is some of that in there. So if you're interested, check that out. All right, I think violence is a type of wrong. Something could be wrong and nonviolent at the same time. If we define violence beyond just physical, then we are kind of just saying violence equals wrong. I like that. Yeah, that's kind of my problem with it, is the emotional bit. I see where people say like you can be emotionally violent towards somebody. I wish that we would choose a different way to express it, because now that's being abused. And now people are confusing being mean to somebody with being violent, and perhaps one somebody should suffer a consequence for, and perhaps one you should not be a little bitch about and move on. But that's just me and all of
I mean, I I kind of agree because I feel like it would kind of be an injustice to people who've actually endured physical
Exactly.
violent
Exactly.
harm.
Agreed.
Like, yeah, let's kind of be mindful and respectful of that.
Agreed. Yeah, that's my problem. 100%. Yes, their perspective, interpretation. Typing on an iPad is trash, by the way. Yeah, it definitely is. Got to get one of them little keyboards, man. Oh, you have the keyboard. Oh no, he just said to get it. Oh, I don't know. I have a keyboard for like my Samsung tablet thing. It's not bad. It's pretty all right. Oppenheimer. The problem with war, though, Joe, is defining who is part of the threat in war. Are the factory workers part of the threat? Well, that's the hard part. I mean, so historically, you see it go two different ways, right? You have a war where more of the passive members of the opposing side are spared and brought into the culture of the winning side and are kind of integrated into society. That happens. And you also see the opposite, where the passive people, say warehouse workers or the women who knit the clothes or the kids who are just going to school trying to grow up and be alive, are all killed. I don't know. I like the first version best, where you just take out the actual aggressors and then you integrate the innocent, if you will, into society. Whether with I don't, it gets complicated, but it's one or the other. You know, if all you have left are women and children, you're not repopulating with that demographic alone. If they're different demographics, you have to integrate them into a society with males to be able to reproduce and have an actual society. So I don't know, and that's another really good question. It's a really good question. If someone invades your home and poses violence to those in their homes, it's simple, they got to go. We watched The Matrix, Joe. When did we watch The Matrix? No, we watched the Thought Police. Shit, what's it called? The Thought Police movie. We did not watch The Matrix. I promise you we did not. It was oh, it's gonna kill me. No, we did not. She's yelling at me from downstairs. No, we didn't. What's the movie with the Thought Police where they the thought crime? They know you're gonna commit a crime, so they like fall on you and God damn it, I don't remember what it's called, but it ain't The Matrix. I love it. I'm right. I'm gonna come downstairs and prove to you that I'm right. It
I
feels
forgot
so
I
good.
had a mic. It's Minority Report.
It's Minority Report. Thank you. We watched Minority Report, Cat. Go Google a Matrix clip. We did not watch it. All right. Anyways, they desire a one-way ticket to Sheol.
Mistaking the Minority Report for the Matrix is like, that's low. They're both great movies, though.
I believe I will agree, but I honestly don't remember enough of the Matrix. I think, what year did the Matrix come out?
99.
Was it 9? Okay. I think I saw it in maybe 2001. So it was very.
Oh, you definitely have to rewatch
That's-
because
yes.
yeah.
It's all come true, right? Or it's all beginning to fill out.
I think it came true several thousand years ago, but I mean, that's me.
Oh God, we got to get into that. What was the movie we were going to do movie night with? I was trying to find it because I had a note somewhere. Do you remember we were talking about doing that?
That was the Culture War, or a movie.
Shoot, no, you're right. You're right. That's exactly what it was.
It could be a movie.
It should be. I hope they make a movie. All right, yeah, that's what it was. Because I want to try to plan that soon, and maybe we do the Matrix after that.
That'd be dope.
I think that'd be cool. All right. Charlie also just joined the Discord, man, because we do movie night, or we're going to. We've done it once before. It was pretty cool. All right, let's see. Floof. Should we consider Jesus' betrayal an act of love because Jesus is dying on the cross is an act of love in itself, and Judas facilitated it? Theological. Can't get into it. It's kind of it's a good question. It's kind of like what Rodriguez brought up with the sword. It becomes a very theological question, and not so much is this true or should we do this, or it's highly, highly, highly theological. I would love to talk about it because that's stuff that I get into super deep all day. It's the philosophical side of Christianity. But there's a lot there. It's very, very interesting. Say intention matters. Yeah, intention definitely matters. I mean, outcome would matter in the case of that, though, don't you think? Ghost, in the case of the cross and Judas's betrayal. Because Jesus would have to die, right? That
Well, it
specific
depends
way.
on who. It depends on who planned the death. Why on a cross? Why on a pole or a tree as a curse? All those things from the Old Testament matter.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So it's complicated.
It's very complicated. Very. I'd like to know how you think it's our near future, Ghost. What was that in reference?
We were referring to Minority Report, and I said I think it's our near future.
Ah, gotcha. Well, do you want to give a quick, or you want to save it?
Well, I said because tech only moves in one direction and it's momentum.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Yeah. No. Quote from Tertullian: "Only without the sword can the Christian wage war. The Lord has abolished the sword." Found a number of others that do seem very anti-war and violence. So mainly the tech part. Oh, she said mainly the tech part. Tech is a byproduct of will. Everyone should watch Dark City, Minority Report. I haven't seen Dark City. Kat, make a note of Dark City, please. Please and thank you.
But if you guys are gonna watch Dark City, you have to watch the director's cut, not the theatrical.
Okay, Kat, make note, please.
Make a note. It's important.
Director's cut of Dark City. All right, we'll do it. Charlie,
Where do we watch?
I don't know, to be honest.
You're probably gonna have
anymore.
to pay to rent it.
I have it.
Yeah, you'll probably have to pay to rent it, especially if you need a director's cut. You're probably gonna have to pay to rent it. Or there are other ways of commandeering these things. Charlie, I hear you on the quote you gave. I would say, just off the top of my head, moment of honesty, from memory only, I do think most of the church fathers, if you will, the older theologians, did seem to be more on the anti-war side than on the pro-war side. As much as it doesn't please me, from memory, I think it does lean that way. But I know for sure there are some prominent theologians that were very, very, very much for war. So it's definitely not a one-sided thing. That would also be an interesting thing to aggregate all mentions of war from any theologian that had any weight behind him that we have on record. It would probably take you, several days of a couple hours a day and put all that together. That'd be really interesting to see. Intimidating, coercing, and causing harm or distress, verbal, financial, online, institutional, and psychological. Scott, was that a definition or was that your definition? If that was yours, that was pretty well done. Minority Report. You watched the thought crime one with your other girlfriend. Oh my God. You're gonna die on this hill now. Or we definitely didn't watch The Matrix. I will die on this hill because I'm very prideful. One more from Clement of Alexandria. About 200 years after Jesus, above all, Christians are not allowed to correct by violence sinful wrongdoing. So my response to that would be, why? Based on what? Based on what? And what they're going to do is they're going to pull the same verses from the Bible that we looked at, and they're just going to interpret them the way that they want to interpret them. That's what everybody does. That's what I do too. That's what everybody does. I had a few others here real quick. I'll just read them and then I got to go. We always do this. It's 2 hours long. Verse 9 in 1 Peter 3. The whole section, suffering for righteousness' sake. Finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Do not repay evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless, for to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. For whoever desires love, and then he goes on. This has been used. Just verse 9. Do not repay evil for evil, reviling for reviling. On the contrary, bless, for to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. Is that enough? Outside of writing 2 paragraphs of commentary with your subjective eisegesis in there? I personally don't think so, no. And then verse 2 out of Titus 3, to speak evil of no one, to avoid quarreling, to be gentle, and to show perfect courtesy towards all people. Starts with, remind them to be submissive to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready for every good work. And then he goes on. Is it enough? Especially Titus, honestly, within context. Is it enough? No, not even close. But that would be my problem, if you will. That's really easy to say. It's much harder to prove why with an objective source, assuming the Bible is objective to you. I struggle with even that, if we're being honest. The only time I ever watched The Matrix was with you. God, I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh no, I took wrong pill. I would say God's will manifests through both intentionality, vessels, and outcomes, beneficiary. For me, they both count as God's will. That's interestingly put. Women have better memories, I believe, Kat. Screw you. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. God, if I'm wrong, I'll have to eat this so hard. Charlie said, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Mikkel, the heart and the outcome both matter. Yeah, Mikkel has great takes. Your honesty is always refreshing. And yeah, you are right that plenty of theologians, Augustine and Aquinas, I think, are totally in favor of just war. Yeah, but it's a beautiful representation of, like, I say this all the time. If theologians, the greatest, smartest theologians that literally, they'd never had sex, they didn't have phones, they never watched YouTube, they didn't have TVs, they had nothing to do at all distracting them, they had no kids. All they did, their entire freaking life, was read the Bible and read other literature to add context to the Bible. If these dudes cannot agree on things in the Bible, why the fuck would we? And why would any of us feel so arrogant to say the Bible says this? How stupid do you have to be? Like, how just absolutely incredibly ignorant as a human being walking this earth would you have to be to think that you know better than dudes who literally did nothing but breathe, eat, sleep, and read the Bible? It's literally insane. It's fucking wild. It's wild. Rachel, interesting fact about the palm branches laid on the ground as Jesus passed on a donkey. Did I miss something? Paul, did Joe watch The Matrix with Kat or his other girlfriend? We'll have to ask the other girlfriend. It is 9 o'clock. The palm branches represented a revolutionary leader that liberated the Rachel. I recognize you now. Now I know. I'm like, Rachel, it's good to see ya. Great drop, too. Great drop. Good stuff right there. Great place to end. All right. If you are watching this later, recorded, I hope you had a lovely time. I did not watch The Matrix with Kat. And also, we have a Discord. There is a link to the Discord at the top of the live chat. There's a link to the Discord in the description of the video. We do a live Bible study every Sunday night at 6 p.m. We do what you're watching right now. This is an open forum discussion. That's why other people are talking. This is Thursday, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. I did not watch The Matrix with you, Kat. And then Saturday night, we do a culture and news where we basically just pull some of the hottest things that are going on the previous week and then cover them and talk about them and sometimes debate about them, whatever. But just make sure people who don't watch the news are kind of up to speed. And also, we enjoy talking about it. So that's 7:30 on Saturday. All of these events, because they're all at different times now, because I'm cruel, are in the Discord at the top. You hit the events tab. News and culture is next, 7:30. Live Bible study, 6 on Sunday. And then Thesis podcast, what you're watching right now. So all that's there. Everybody that's in the live chat is lovely. They're phenomenal. They're all in the Discord. They're all talking in there all the time, and they're smarter than me. I go in there a lot of the time, and I feel very much lost. I know a lot about a little. They know a lot about a lot. So I highly recommend popping in there and saying what's up. I didn't know you were a rapper, Joe. Only you could spit those. I very much enjoyed you tonight, Charlie. I am dramatically pushing you to hop in the Discord with everybody. I feel like you would be a phenomenal addition in there, man. So I hope you consider it. The problem is many are arrogant and think they know better. The problem is everybody is freaking arrogant and thinks they know better, including me all of the time. It's a constant checking of myself. Like I have internal monologue 24/7, just calling myself an arrogant asshole all day long. That's why open debate is so important. Yes. Joe, our good old Lord, says, take care of my sheep peacefully. I try. Joe is just being humble. He knows. No, I know a lot about little. Except whether I've watched The Matrix or not. I feel like I'm in too deep now. I'll be honest. Even if I realize that I did not, or that I did in fact watch The Matrix, I think I will take this to the grave. I'm in too deep. All right, y'all. It's 9 o'clock. 2 hours in. I love y'all. This was fantastic. I will.
Peace.
What's that?
I just said peace.
Oh, peace.
Later.
Bye, y'all. I love you.
Bye. I'll decide what we're doing for next Thursday. We might do what we kind of talked about. I think we'll talk about it in Discord. I'll start a little thread and we can decide what we want to do. Or I'll just post a freaking poll and let y'all decide. Everybody have a good night. I love y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. Nope. We'll see you Saturday night for the culture and news. Charlie, join Discord, please. It's free. If I didn't say that already, it's totally free. Nobody's ever going to ask you for money. It's just a place to come say hang out. Yes, Floof. Tell Charlie to join Discord. Tell him to do that. Say no to pacifism. Agreed. Love y'all. Night.